Hello and welcome to today's session on pessimistic versus optimistic locking in RDBMS databases. Okay, so in order to understand these locking mechanisms, first we need to understand what is concurrency in databases. Okay, so we'll take a very simple example of an account table. Okay, and it has only two columns, one is ID and another is balance. Okay, and what is happening now is there are two transactions, okay, which are happening at the same time. Okay, so let's say for example, you go to the ATM, you're going to the ATM to withdraw some money from your account. Okay, and then there's another transaction. Let's say your Netflix subscription fee, okay, is coming at the same time, is deducting at the same time. Okay, so it's a very much possible scenario. Okay, so what happens is both these transactions, okay, read the balance, okay, at the same time, at the very same time, that is 1,000 and 1,000. Okay, now what happens is you withdraw the money. Let's say for an example, just an example, you withdraw 100 rupees. Now the balance is 900. Okay, here T2, the subscription fee was 100. Okay, so it also got deducted, and according to this also, this transaction, the balance is 900. So what happens now is T1 is also done. It goes and modifies the balance to 900. At the same time, T2 goes, according to this transaction also, the balance is now 900. So it just overrides. Okay. So now if you see, after both these transactions have happened, right? Here, the balance is 900, which is wrong. Okay. The right balance should have been 800. Okay, just because of these concurrent transactions and because we not providing any mechanism to handle this, to support this. Okay, to support this, the what do we say, the final outcome is wrong. Okay, the final outcome is wrong. Okay, so this is just wanted to explain the concurrency in databases. So multiple transactions happening at the same time, which is very much possible scenario. So in order to avoid such scenarios, right, such concurrent, to preserve the data integrity, we need locking. Okay, we need locking. Okay, okay, okay. Now we'll see what are the types of locking. So there are two types of locking. One is pessimistic and another is optimistic. So let's quickly see what is pessimistic locking. So let's take the example again. Here we have our account table, ID and balance. Okay, and here the account ID is 1 and balance is 1,000. Okay, now again there are two transactions, T1 and T2, okay, happening at the same time. I mean, they both go and try to to fetch the balance. Okay, but here in a pessimistic locking, okay, one of the transaction wins. Okay, in locking the row. Okay, so whichever, it's a race condition. So whichever transaction comes first happens to lock this row. So this row will be locked. Okay, by transaction T1, and all the other transactions will wait. Okay, until this lock is released, okay, by the previous transaction. So now what happens is T1 has got the lock. Now what it is going to do, it fetches the balance 1,000. Okay, it deducts the 100 rupees. Okay, now the balance is 900. Now it goes and modifies this balance to 900. Okay, and once the transaction is committed, once the transaction is done, it releases a lock. Okay, now what happens is the other transactions, now T2 will get the lock. Now T2 will get the lock. It will now read the balance 900. Okay, and it will deduct the fees. Okay, and now the real balance, the right balance would be 800. It will write this balance, and it will also release a lock basically. Okay, it will also release the lock. Okay, so I hope you've got what is pessimistic locking. There are multiple transactions coming at the same time. One of them gets a lock, they do the operations, they release a lock in the so when the record or records, they are locked, all the other transactions will be waiting, okay, until they get hold of the lock. Okay, so once the lock is released, the other transaction, one of the other transactions, waiting transactions, will get the lock and they can do their operations. So this is what is pessimistic locking. Okay, now let's look into optimistic locking. Okay, so again, let's take this example. Let's draw the box, the table, ID and balance. Okay, just 1,000. Okay, in optimistic locking, we need one more column called version. Okay, called version. and it is initialized with 0. Okay. So now what happens is now two transactions will come, T1 and T2. Okay. Now both are coming at the same time. There's no locking mechanism in optimistic locking. So they both will read balance and version, which is 0. Balance and version, which is 0. Okay. Now what will happen is T1, both these transactions are happening at the same time. Okay. So they will debit the amount. Now it is 900. Okay, debit the amount, it is 900. Now what the query will, for example, let's consider T1, right? So it will go to update the balance, right? Update account set balance equal to 900. Along with this, it will also increment the version. Let's say version was V0, right? It had read the version as 0. So version equal to V plus 1, okay, where ID equal to 1 and version equal to V. Okay, so this will be the query. So now whichever transaction is able to hit this query, for example, let's say it's T1. So update account set balance 900. So what it did, it updated the balance and also it updated the version. Okay, where ID equal to 1 and version equal to 0. So it was able to update the balance and version. Okay. Okay. Now transaction T2 also comes. It fires the same query, but only this time it is going to fail because it is not going to find this particular row. Why? Because what it is, where ID equal to 1 and version equal to 0. According to this, version was still 0, right? Version equal to 0. But here now the version is 1. So this transaction, this particular query is going to fail, and that we are going to get optimistic failure exception. The DB is going to throw optimistic failure exception. So in optimistic locking, the DB throws the exception and it is on to the application to catch this exception and retry this transaction. So what will happen is now we got the optimistic failure exception. So T2 again will retry the transaction. T2 now will go to fetch the balance again. So this time it is going to get 900, which was modified by T1 and version as 1 this time. Okay, as 1. Now it will do its debit and all. Now the balance would be 800. And what query it is going to find? It is going to fire update account. Now this time V is what? 1, right? V is version. Version is 1, right? Set balance equal to 800, okay, version equal to V plus 1, right, where ID equal to 1 and version equal to V, which is 1. So this time this query will be successful and the T2 will, how the table will look like now, what will be the state of the table, balance, and here is version. So it will be 800 now, balance, and version will be 2. We are incrementing, right? We are incrementing. Version will be 2. So optimistic locking works on the mechanism of versioning. Okay. So it does not lock the rows, okay, but resolves using versioning mechanism. Okay. So I hope you have got these two types of locking. Okay. So so in which scenarios we should use? So for example, so if there is a lot of contention or there is a lot of concurrency, right? In those scenarios, we need to use pessimistic locking. It is recommended over there. But the concurrences or the contention is minimum. In that case, default mechanism is optimistic. Okay. Okay. So I've just given some examples of pessimistic locking here. Okay. So what happens is the transaction is started. So now we are fetching the balance, the row, the count entry for ID equal to 1. And if you see this for update. So this means that we are acquiring pessimistic lock, okay, for this particular transaction. So all the other transactions will be waiting. So this transaction has got the pessimistic lock. It is updating the balance, okay, and it is then committing. So once the transaction is committed, the lock will be released, and all the other locks and all the other transactions will, one of the other transactions will get the lock, okay. And if you see the optimistic locking, here there's no locking mechanism. I mean, we are not locking. So here we are fetching both the balance and version, if you see, right? And then we are updating. So when we are updating, the version is incremented, okay? and with fetching with lookup of previous version. Okay, so these are the examples of pessimistic and optimistic locking. Okay, so I've written a simple Java program to help us understand this concept. Okay, so what I've done is there are two threads. We can say two transactions. Okay, both are calling the withdraw function. Okay, now what? Let's go inside the withdraw function. So what happen is both the transactions are going to fetch that particular row. It will read the particular balance. Okay, and then we are making the thread sleep. Why? For example, if T1 came first here, right? It read the balance, current balance, and now post that it is sleeping. So it gets ample amount of time for T2 to do this operation to read the same balance, 1000. Okay, to read the same balance. Okay, so both the transactions or threads will read the same balance, 1000, and then we are once the threads are awoken, we are modifying the balance and persisting into the database. Okay, so here is a MySQL. Let's see. So here is a table, ID, balance, and version. Ignore version for now. We'll see version during optimistic locking. So first we'll see, we'll reproduce, right? We'll reproduce this particular, I mean, when there's no locking, how concurrency happens. Okay. So let me run this. So in the logs, you will see what is happening. So here, if you see thread T1 and T2 both read the balance 1000, thread T1 updated the balance 900 and T2 also updated the balance 900. There's no locking mechanism. Okay. So both of them, according to them, the balance is 900 and both of them updated the same balance. Okay. So if you see here, the balance is 900. Okay, which is wrong. Okay, now we'll see, now we'll use the pessimistic locking for this. Okay, so simple, just a simple change I want to do. Instead of this one's normal find by id, I am doing find by id for update. Okay, for update. So this will make sure that we get the pessimistic locking. So here we have annotation in jpa basically, that for pessimistic locking. Okay, so now we are locking. So whichever transaction comes first will get the lock. So now let me first update the balance back to 1000. Okay, if you just select, the balance is 1000 now. Now let me run this. What happens? Let's see. So if you see, thread 2 got the lock first, it updated the balance to 900. Okay, then it released the lock. Then thread 1 got the lock, it read the balance, it got the right balance, it read the balance is 900, it updated the balance, thread 1, and it rewrote into the database with the right balance. So if you see, final account is balance with balance 800. If you see, so let's start from, yeah, so it is 800. So this was example of pessimistic locking. Now we'll see the example of optimistic locking. Okay, so now let me update the balance back to 1000. Now the concept of versioning will come. Okay, so as I said, for optimistic locking, we need additional column called version. Okay, so this is nothing but entity, and another one change I want to make is I want to call withdraw with retry, because in optimistic locking, application needs to handle needs to catch the exception, optimistic exception, and need to retry. So here, if you see, I'm doing 3 retries, right? And if I get the optimistic locking failure exception, okay, then I am retrying again. I am retrying again. Out from this catch block, I'm going to the while loop again and retrying again. So let's look into this scenario. Okay, is everything good? Okay, one more change I want to make is, where's account service? Yeah. So I don't want this pessimistic locking. I just want the normal find by ID. Okay. So now, as you know, in optimistic locking, we don't have locking mechanism. We do resolution with the versioning mechanism. So now let me uh, run this and let's see what is happening here. So if you see both the thread, right, this as there's no locking mechanism, both the thread uh, read the same balance 1000 with version 0 and 0. Okay, and thread 1 updated the balance. Okay, it was able to successfully first update the balance. Okay, and if you see now, let's see the version now. Okay, the balance and the version. So if you see version is 1, so transaction T1 has updated the balance and version 1. Now thread 2 or transaction 2, it also went to update the balance. Okay, 900. Okay, but it failed because there was no row with version as 0. Okay, and that is why we have got the exception already for transaction T2. If you see here, we have got the exception of optimistic locking failure. Okay, now what will happen is we will retry the transaction. That is, we will reread that particular record. Okay, so with balance 900 and version as 1. So now if you do that, now transaction T2, okay, it reads, see, transaction T2 reads a balance 900 and it updated basically. So if you see, it was successfully updated. It successfully updated the balance 800 and with version 2, right? So if you see now, the version is incremental. Okay, version and balance is incremented. Okay, so I hope you've got the pessimistic and optimistic locking mechanisms. Okay. So this is it. Thanks for watching. Have a happy, healthy, wealthy, and a great day. Thank you so much.